Well, back to the tomato problems. I was here yesterday and now the electrical fence is in shambles. Some big animal must have run into the wires and snapped some of them. I'll try to save it as good as possible, but no more than that. The season is soon over and I think I'll have a little bit of tomatoes, we'll see. I have picked a couple now for eating. But the animal has definitely got entangled into the wire here and pulled it all the way down there towards the corner of my property and the fence, the outside fence, which isn't holding anything back. Constant battle this is.
Tøj på en gang.
Pas nu på, hvad du siger.
Ej, jeg tænker da ikke, at jeg skal vaske alt hans tøj på en gang.
Sure is a lot quicker to fill the joints when you don't have to think about the end result needing to look pretty, like on the big wall there. Now it's just to make the walls more airtight and stronger. It's a project that I didn't really expect, but my geometra reminded me it would be a good idea. So now I'm doing it all over, but it's a lot quicker than I feared. So it should be fine. I don't know if I might do the joints on one wall and then put the studs up, or do it all. I'll figure that out. But this week I want to finish the tractor shed, so this is just because it rained today that I've been doing the joints. It's gonna be the most uneven roof in the world, but my excuse for now is that I'm working with fresh wood, not cut into studs or anything, or rafters. Nice and triangular to work with. This is a bit stupid, but I want to get it done fast and get back to the house. Should be strong enough to just hold metal sheets. And I've tried to go for an even slope here instead of it going straight this way. I want to have the right degree so the water will run off the roof. Or at least try to. In the last video where I baked my sourdough bread, a subscriber asked me how I do it, and of course I'd love to explain it. There's tons of different ways, but when you get the hang of it, sourdough is actually pretty simple. You just need your water and your flour and your sourdough starter or mother dough or whatever you call it. It is just, if you want to start it, you mix water and flour and you just let it sit, and then you mix in new flour, and suddenly it becomes alive. There's bacteria in it and you can start baking with it. So what I do, I have it in the fridge when I don't bake, and then to spark it back into life, I take it out and do a couple of mixtures. Sometimes it takes 2 days for it to come alive again, and sometimes it's very quick. I couldn't tell you why, but the ideal is that it raises within 4-6 hours, in my opinion. Then it's ready to bake, which it did yesterday. So now I'm going to divide it into 2, so I can do 2 loaves. And I'm going to try as best as possible to explain the process while doing it. So it's just 3 times of everything. 1 part water, and then 1 part flour. I'm not gonna give you the exact recipe I use because it's easier if you just look it up. I'm just having taken it from a recipe book, so nothing fancy about that. And then the leftover sourdough I put to the side. I don't want to throw anything away, but you can actually use that to make crackers, which I always do, which is nice with cheeses and olives and all that. For the aperitivo, now that we are in Italy. And then when mixing the sourdough, it's very important that you actually use your hands, because you want the bacteria from the hands in your sourdough. Actually helps it rise quicker and keep it very active. Just get hands in there and mix it really good. While these 2 sourdoughs they raise, I like to put a rubber band around so I can see when it's rise to the double. This helps me know when it's ready to mix with the other dough. The other dough I'm gonna mix now, and I do it to put it in autolyze, which means the dough is actually just reaction. The flour is reacting to the water, which makes it more stretchy, and the chances of having big air bubbles in the dough is more prevalent. So I do that while this is, and then mix it with salt and this later when they have rised. This makes the dough more smooth. And then you can always experiment, do different seeds, or I also sometimes put fruits in it, what we have in the garden, to experiment. Figs, plums and pears the other day. Then I do like to prepare the salt in these little bowls, so I don't forget it. I've countless times I've forgotten, and a bread without salt in it is pretty dull, if you ask me. The next step will be later in the video, as I have to wait for the dough to rise. I have finally found edible mushrooms, porcini. You really have to not look for them to find the good spots. I'm just in my own forest cutting down the last couple of rafters for the tractor shed and I find it. And this one has just started growing, so I bet if I return in some days it might be even bigger than this one. They might not be porcini mushrooms, but it's definitely of that kind that's edible. So might do a nice pasta tonight. Oh my god, would you look at actual porcini mushrooms after 3 years, almost 3 years living here in wonderful Italy in a national park where there's actual porcini competitions picking them. I've gone on countless mushroom trips, walks around to try to find them and I haven't found them. These are tiny, but it's definitely a beginning. Look at it, the stem, man. Oh, I'm so excited, finally! I found him. Look at him. Oh my god.
Gæt, vi skal have spise i aften. Jeg har fundet min første porcini. Se!
Ej, er du sikker på det?
Ja, de her to, de er det.
Now it's time for the next step in the process of my sourdough here. It's mixing the mother dough with the dough that I put in Außerleis before. And I also had the idea to add a little bit of chili to one of them to try that. I haven't tried that before. I'll do that. Now it's also time to add the salt. Now that I've mixed the two doughs, the sourdough that's alive and the dough I've been having sitting around, they are mixed up with salt and a little bit of chili in one of them to try it. I'm preparing to take them into these other bowls where I'll be folding them for the next 3-4 hours to create even bigger air pockets in the dough. And now for the folding part, I like to grab a hold of one side, lift it up and put it in under itself, spin the bowl, do the same again, and then on all the four sides if it's possible. I've heard that it's not too good to stretch it too far, because then you'll do the opposite of what you want to create those air pockets. But again, I'm not an expert. I've come to a certain level and I like where I'm at. The bread is good. A good little thing is to have a bowl of water next to it to keep your fingers moist so the dough doesn't stick to your fingers. I wasn't too successful here, but and again I don't know if it's properly, it's just something I like. Then half an hour I will repeat, and then I wait an hour and then repeat, and then 2 hours I can start the next step. As you can see here on the end of the rafters, the part of the rafter that's going to hold the overhang, the last 5 here I just made from today's wood that I picked up. They're not long enough because of course the structure isn't even all over. I measured on the other end that if I do the rafters 3 meters and 15 centimeters, I at least have some leeway so I can just cut it off and precise it. But the tractor shed was never really planned out perfectly. I just put the new beams in the same places where all the old bamboo poles were, and for that reason it's very uneven. It's sort of following the two terraces, and therefore the rafters ended up not being long enough. As you of course have seen this, but it's not the perfect structure, so it is what it is. And the one that's missing the most is 20 centimeters. I'll definitely figure it out, but I always make a mistake. And now it's time for the last bit of flipping it on top of itself. And that's it. And then you can fold it out on the table, but I'll explain that in 2 hours.
Synes du, det er sjovt?
Ja. Men igen, som altid farer det for tidligt jo. Men jeg synes, det smager godt. Altså, og det er stadigvæk mad, jeg selv har fundet, det kan jeg godt lide på. Now it's time to see how the dough is doing, and if it's raised enough, which it has, I'm gonna flip it out on the table. You can let it slip out by itself, or you can help it with this one. It is easier for it to slip out if you use a plastic box, but I don't like plastic, so it sticks a little better to this steel bowl. And then again, same principle, try to push it in under itself. And then it just needs to rest for approximately half an hour, a little less, a little more. Doesn't make that big of a difference. My folding here wasn't too good, but should make a fine bread tomorrow anyways. Now it's time to flip it again and then fold it on top of itself for the last time before putting it in the bread basket overnight. And the dough only needs to sit like this for a few minutes, and in that time you can easily prepare the baskets. In the beginning I used to use rice flour, but I've begun using just regular flour to put on the kitchen towel inside the basket because it gives better taste, so one of my expert sourdough friends has told me. And into the baskets they go. Then I leave them like this for another half an hour and then into the fridge, and then they should be ready to bake tomorrow. Now it's time to turn on the oven. I like to do it 45 minutes before, so I'm sure it's heated up perfectly. And I set it to the highest degrees the oven goes to. This only goes to 250, ideally 300 would be better, so the cast iron plate inside the oven really heats up, or the cast iron pot, which is even better to bake the bread if you have a lid for it, with hot air. And then wait 45 minutes and then it's ready for the bread. Flip them onto the baking paper. And then you can choose to make a cut in the dough. It's always quite fun that you get to choose where it rises, or you can also just leave it as it is, whole, and it'll make its own crust somewhere. But we'll try one of each today. Also, I like to boil some water before I put in the loaves, and then just after I've put in the loaves, I add some water to create steam inside the oven. This will help the bread not create a crust instantly and then therefore rise better, also make a better color of the bread, and some other good benefits that I can't remember. Turn down the temperature a little bit, and to 220 I usually do, and then 20 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes, after the 20 minutes, the last 10 minutes, I sometimes do 250 degrees to give it a little bit of color if it's necessary. Well, I hope you got something out of me stumbling through my words here trying to explain how I do about my sourdough, but this is it. Du skal tænke på, at jeg sidder og piver på computeren. Hvor nice, vil du correct det?
Jeg har det godt tænkt.
Jamen, jeg har lavet... Jeg er sur nu, så jeg smider bare ekstra i hver gang, jeg skal. Well, the tractor shed is almost finished now. I just need to order the roofing sheets and then put them on. I'm gonna do that Monday. I am, though, a little bit conflicted with myself if I should put some of the old planks from the other roof on top of the rafters, because I'm afraid that I've made a little bit too much space in between the rafters, the 60 centimeters. It might be a little too much, but the internet and research said it's fine, but I'm not so sure. Maybe I'll try a plate and then see how it goes. Lay them out there before and see how it goes. And I've tried to explain what I'm doing while I'm baking the sourdough. I've had some comments now asking me to do it, so I've finally done it. I hope you guys got something out of it. And I've done a little joints work because it was raining. I'll probably continue to do that when the roof on the tractor shed is done. And I found the mushrooms. Did a nice mushroom pasta. Unfortunately, it wasn't the real porcini mushrooms, but still was excellent. I think there's not too much else to say than that, other than thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.